The clock somewhere in the distance has just finished its long, low counting. 12 strokes, each one softer than the last, dissolving into the cold night air like breath on a winter window. The last echo fades, and what remains is silence. Not the hard silence of empty spaces, but the deep, padded silence of a world that has simply decided to rest. You are here now. You have arrived. The station opens before you. Slowly, the way a dream opens. Not all at once, but in layers, each one settling gently over the last. There is the smell first. Coal smoke and iron, cold stone and something sweetly floral. Perhaps from a window box somewhere above the arching entrance, a last brave cluster of late-season roses, refusing to acknowledge the lateness of the hour. The smell is old and kind. It asks nothing of you. It simply surrounds you, the way a favorite coat surrounds you when you lift it from its hook on a winter evening. Your footsteps slow as you pass beneath the great entrance arch. The arch is iron and stone, impossibly tall, dressed along its crown in scrollwork that the lamplight cannot quite fully illuminate. There are suggestions of leaves up there, and perhaps birds, half-seen shapes that may be flowers or faces or clouds, all softened by decades of soot and weather into something beautifully indistinct. You don't need to see it clearly. It is enough to know it is there above you, solid and patient, holding the roof of the world up just so, the way it has for more years than either of you can count. Beneath it, you step onto the platform. The platform stretches away on both sides, its stone flags worn smooth and pale, polished by the passing of 10,000 journeys, into something almost luminous. The gas lamps stand in a long row, each one casting its own small, warm kingdom of amber light. And between each lamp, soft shadows pool and breathe. The shadows do not feel dark here. They feel restful, the way shadows in a beloved room feel restful, familiar, gentle, simply the absence of something that was never needed. To your left and to your right, the locomotives sleep. There are two of them on the near tracks, great iron creatures settled into stillness, their boilers cooling now, ticking very softly in the deep quiet, the way a cast iron stove ticks after the last log has been laid. From one, a long exhalation of pale steam drifts upward and sideways, moving slowly across the lamplight, through the cold air, unfurling as it rises until it becomes nothing, or rather, until it becomes part of the air itself, indistinguishable, released. You watch it go. There is no hurry. There is nowhere to be except exactly here. The steam drifts and thins and vanishes. The station holds its breath. Your own breathing, you notice, has grown slower. It seems to have taken its rhythm from the station, from the long, unhurried intervals between sounds, the faint tick of cooling iron, the distant murmur of something, a sleeping pigeon perhaps, shifting in the ironwork far above, the soft groan of a timber somewhere in the old station master's office, the building settling into the night the way old buildings do, flexing and relaxing, breathing in their own patient way. You set your bag down, not because you must, but because it seems right. The bag belongs on the pale stone floor of this platform. At this hour, in this pool of amber lamplight, it has arrived where it was always going. So, perhaps, have you. Your eyes move along the platform, taking it in without urgency. The wooden benches with their curved iron legs, empty now, the seats worn smooth and dark with use, the large station clock high on the far wall, its face cream and steady, its hands showing the few minutes past midnight, moving so slowly that watching them requires a particular kind of patience you find yourself, just now, entirely willing to offer. The clock does not race. The clock does not urge. The clock simply marks the passage of moments with the same unhurried grace it has always used and will always use. Time here is not something that runs out. Time here is simply something that flows very slowly, like a broad river at the end of a long valley, wide and deep and in no particular hurry to reach the sea. A door opens somewhere at the far end of the platform. The sound it makes is the most comfortable sound imaginable. A soft wooden creak, a brass latch settling, a whisper of warmer air escaping from some interior room into the cool night. Then footsteps, not quick, purposeful footsteps. The footsteps of someone with an errand to complete, a task to finish before bed. These footsteps are something else entirely. They are the footsteps of someone who belongs here, in the same way that the lamps belong here, and the ironwork, and the sleeping locomotives. Each footfall is unhurried, evenly spaced, falling on the pale stone with a soft, satisfying weight. A lantern swings gently in the distance. Its light is warmer than the gas lamps, a deeper gold, almost amber, almost honey, and it moves with the gentle rhythm of the walking figure who carries it. As the figure draws closer, the light begins to resolve him. A man of middle age and comfortable bearing, dressed in the deep navy of a station porter's coat, its brass buttons each catching and returning the lantern light with a small, warm wink. His cap sits level and easy on his head. His scarf, a dark wool affair wound once around the neck, gives him the look of someone who has made sensible peace with the coldness of the world. He walks as though he has all the time that has ever existed, because here he does. As he reaches you, he lifts the lantern just slightly, not to examine you, not to assess or question, simply to see you properly, the way a person raises a lantern to read a welcome sign. And the expression on his face as the light falls upon you is one you have perhaps not seen in some time, but which you recognize entirely, the expression of someone genuinely glad to find you here, not surprised, not hurried, simply, warmly glad. He smiles. It is not a large smile, not the theatrical smile of someone performing welcome. It is a quiet smile, the kind that lives in the eyes as much as the mouth, the kind that takes a moment to arrive and stays once it has. The lines beside his eyes deepen very slightly. The lantern swings once, then settles. "Good evening," he says. His voice is low and even, pitched for the quietness of this hour. Not a whisper, but something adjacent to it, something that understands the silence around it and chooses not to disturb it overmuch. Each word is given its full weight and then released, the way he might set a warm cup down on a wooden table, gently, without hurry, meaning it, or perhaps, he continues with the smallest tilt of his head, good midnight would be more accurate. You find that you are smiling too. I wasn't sure. You hear yourself say, and your own voice sounds softer here, easier, as though this place has already begun to do its quiet work on you, whether anyone would still be about at this hour. He considers this with the air of someone who has all the time needed to consider anything. The lantern sways very slightly in the draft from some far corner of the station. "Someone is always about," he says at last. "The station doesn't sleep. Not entirely. It rests. It breathes. There is a difference." He glances down the long platform toward the two great locomotives standing in their quiet repose, the steam still drifting from one in long, slow veils. Like them, engines at rest are not engines stopped. There is still warmth in the iron, still life. He looks back at you. You've had a long journey. It is not a question, but you nod, because it is true, not only of tonight, not only of the miles that brought you to this platform, but of something larger and less easily named, the kind of long that accumulates slowly, the way dust accumulates on a windowsill, until one day you look up and wonder when the light grew so dim. He nods too, as though he understands all of this without needing to hear it. "Then you are in exactly the right place," he says simply. And you find, standing here beneath the great iron arch, in the amber lamplight, with the steam drifting slowly upward into the cold and quiet dark, that this is precisely, completely true. You are in exactly the right place. The clock on the far wall marks another slow minute. The station breathes, and somewhere, distantly, a door opens onto a room where the firelight is warm, and the chairs are deep, and the night is long, and nothing is required of you at all. The door he opens for you is small and set deep into the station wall, framed in dark painted timber that has swelled and settled over many winters into a perfect, particular fit. The kind of fit that requires no key, no latch lifting, only the gentle press of a familiar hand. He presses his, and the door opens, and the warmth comes out to meet you like something alive. You step inside. The room is not large. It does not need to be. Its dimensions are precisely what they should be. Wide enough for 2 armchairs before a hearth. Long enough for a counter along one wall. Low enough in the ceiling that the lamplight reaches every corner, without effort, filling the room the way warm water fills a cupped palm. Completely, easily, all the way to the edges. The ceiling is dark timber, crossed by beams that have blackened gently over decades of coal smoke and pipe smoke and lamp smoke, and the walls are paneled to shoulder height in the same dark wood, smooth and close-grained, polished by the incidental touch of passing hands until they hold a quiet gleam. The stove stands against the near wall. It is a small cast-iron thing, squat and serious. Its door set with a mica window through which the fire inside can be seen burning in long, slow pulses, amber deepening to orange, orange to a brief and beautiful red at its heart, then settling again. The coals shift once as you enter. A tiny subsidence, a private rearrangement, and a small shower of sparks drifts upward and vanishes behind the glass. The heat the stove gives off is the best possible kind, not aggressive, not dry, but gentle and pervasive, filling the room from the floor upward, loosening the cold from your shoulders, the way a long breath loosens tension from the chest. You stand before it for a moment. Your hands, you notice, have unclenched. "Sit, please," the night porter says, setting his lantern on its hook by the door, where it joins 3 others already hanging, all lit, all swaying very slightly from the disturbance of your entrance. Their combined light making the room flicker once, warmly, before settling. He gestures toward the nearer of the 2 armchairs, a deep, tufted thing, upholstered in a fabric that was once perhaps burgundy and has faded over many comfortable years to something closer to the color of dried rose petals, a color that has no precise name but feels immediately and entirely right. You sit. The chair receives you the way a good chair always does, with a small sigh of leather and horsehair, a settling, an accommodation as though it has been waiting in precisely this configuration for precisely you at precisely this hour. Your back finds the curve of the backrest. Your arms find the arms. Your feet, almost of their own will, move closer to the warmth of the stove. You could sleep here. You understand that now, with a clarity that is itself restful. You could sleep here very easily and very well. The night porter moves to the counter. The counter runs the full length of the opposite wall, dark wood polished to the same quiet gleam as the paneling, its surface bearing the collected evidence of a long and careful working life. At the far end, a row of leather-bound ledgers stands in perfect alignment, their spines stamped in faded gilt, years and routes and the names of lines that once carried the world from one side of the country to the other. Beside them, a sheaf of timetables, thick cream-colored paper, folded with precision and stacked with the patient tidiness of someone who knows exactly where everything is and has no need to prove it. A magnifying glass on a brass handle, a pen lying at rest beside an open inkwell, its nib still faintly dark, and the keys. The keys are hanging on a board fixed to the wall above the counter. Rows and rows of them, each on its own numbered brass hook, each with its own brass tag engraved with a number too small to read from here. They are every size. Long, slender keys for tall doors, small, round keys for desk drawers and clockwork housings, large, weighty keys for the station's outer gates and engine sheds. They hang utterly still in the still air. Each one is a small, contained mystery, a door not yet opened, a room not yet entered. Together, they make a kind of catalog of the possible. From a lower shelf, the night porter lifts a small tin pot, already warm, you realize, as he wraps a cloth around its handle and sets it on the iron trivet beside the stove. From elsewhere on the shelf, two thick ceramic cups, cream-colored, rimmed in a thin, dark band, set down on the counter with a satisfying weight. Beside them, a small tin of something. You cannot see the label from here, but the smell that begins to drift across the room as he opens it tells you everything. Something warm and dark and sweetly spiced. Something you have tasted before in some half-remembered winter, in some earlier chapter of yourself. He spoons it slowly. There is no hurry in his movements. There is never any hurry in his movements. Each action is complete in itself. The spooning finished before the pouring begins. The pouring finished before he sets the pot back on the trivet. Each small motion, give it its full duration, and no more. Watching him work is like watching the hands of the station clock move. You know they are moving. You can see that they are moving. But the movement itself is so perfectly measured that it feels almost like stillness. Steam rises from both cups. He carries them across. One offered to you, handle outward. The small courtesy so natural it requires no comment. And settles himself into the other armchair with the ease of a man who has done exactly this. In exactly this chair, on many nights before. His cup rests on the broad arm of the chair. The fire pulses once inside the stove. The mica window glows. You wrap both hands around your cup. The warmth travels inward immediately, up through your palms and into your wrists. moving along your arms with a slow, unhurried thoroughness, as though the warmth itself knows where it is going and sees no need to rush. You drink. It is sweet and dark and faintly spiced with something you cannot quite name. Cardamom, perhaps, or something related to it. Something that has grown somewhere warm and far away and arrived here through a long and patient journey of its own. The taste sits in your mouth for a moment before moving, like the warmth moved. Through you, do many people pass through at this hour? You ask, because the room and the fire and the warmth in the cup have made words feel easy. Not necessary, but easy. The way words feel between people who have known each other a long time. The night porter tilts his head very slightly, considering. More than you might expect, he says. The midnight trains bring all kinds. The early risers, the late finishers, the ones who couldn't sleep at home and found that moving helped. A pause. The coal shifts again in the stove. And sometimes, people who have simply been a long time in motion and need a moment to remember that stopping is also permitted. In case, he says simply with a small, unhurried gesture that means, in case you need one. In case you would like to stay a while. In case the night turns out to be longer and kinder than you expected, and sleep comes before you've had a chance to plan for it. There is no obligation in the gesture, only the gentle acknowledgement that sleep, when it comes, is not something to apologize for. The fire settles. Your cup is 3/4 empty. The warmth in your hands has long since moved into your chest, into the slow, heavy ease of your shoulders, into the particular looseness behind your eyes that means that the night is doing what nights, at their best, are supposed to do. The room hums very softly around you. The stove, the watches, the far and gentle station sounds, the small sounds of two people sitting comfortably together in the amber light, requiring nothing of each other except the pleasure of being quietly present. The night porter says nothing now. He does not need to. Outside, another long breath of steam drifts past the heavy door. The clock, somewhere, marks the 1/4 hour, a single soft tone, low and round, that arrives and lingers, and then, like all the best things, like the steam, like the sound of footsteps, fading down an empty platform, gently, gracefully lets itself go. Your eyes are heavy. The wool blanket waits, green and patient, on its shelf. And the fire, inside its small iron house, breathes on. The night porter carries the lamp ahead of you. That is all. He does not speak. He does not need to. The lamp is enough. Its amber circle moving along the narrow corridor ahead of you, like a small, unhurried sun, finding the grain of the wooden floorboards, finding the seam where wall meets ceiling, finding the faint brass numbers on each door as you pass. 3, 4, 5. You are not counting them, not exactly. They simply arrive in the lamplight and then fall back into the dark, each one with the same quiet dignity, each one containing behind it some private arrangement of stillness and shadow. At the end of the corridor, he stops. Door 6. The key he produces is a small one, smaller than you expected, with a round brass bow and a tag that catches the light. The lock turns with a sound that is barely a sound at all, a soft click, a tiny mechanical resolution, a door deciding to become open. He steps back and holds the lamp a little higher so that the light falls into the room ahead of you. You step through. The room is not large, but largeness has nothing to do with it. The room is complete. A bed occupies the near wall. A proper Victorian bed, high-framed, in dark wood with a headboard whose carved upper edge makes the shape of the slow arch. And atop it, a quilt. The quilt is what you see first, before anything else. Because the quilt is what the room is built around. Thick and deep and layered, covered in a pattern of small shapes. Diamonds, perhaps, or something close to diamonds, in colors that were once vivid and have faded now into something far better than vivid, something soft and complex and indefinite, the colors of things long loved. The night porter sets the lamp on the small table beside the bed. The window faces the platform side, he says, very quietly. So there will be the station sounds through the night. Some people find it helps. He pauses. I find it helps. The door settles closed behind him with the same small, decisive sound as the key in the lock, and then his footsteps recede along the corridor, growing softer with each step, each one fainter than the last, until they are absorbed entirely by the quiet of the station, and you cannot tell, by the end, whether the last sound you heard was a footstep or simply the building breathing. The room holds you. You stand for a moment in the lamplight, simply being in it. The walls are papered in a pattern that the low light makes mysterious, a repeating motif you can almost identify. Something botanical, perhaps. Small leaves or fronds, rendered in a color between sage and ash that shifts as the lamplight moves. The ceiling is white and unadorned and very still. The window, you go to it, drawn not by intention, but by some older habit of arriving in a room and finding where the outside is. The curtains are lace, not delicate or fussy, but a sturdy, closely worked lace in cream, hanging in two panels that move very slightly, very slowly, as though breathing in some draft you cannot feel. Through them, the moonlight arrives. It arrives the way the best light always arrives, without asking. It comes through the lace and is divided by it into a soft, intricate pattern that lies across the floorboards at your feet. A pattern of light and shadow, of small bright diamonds and the dark lines between them, shifting very gently as the curtains breathe. On the wall above the bed, the same pattern lives, fainter, the moonlight thinned by distance into something barely more than a suggestion of itself. You stand and watch it for a little while. Outside, the platform is empty and still and silver. The gas lamps stand in their row, each one burning quietly, each one surrounded by its own faint corona in the cold night air. The great locomotives rest on their tracks in the middle distance, dark shapes against a darker sky, patient and enormous and entirely at peace. As you watch, a small drift of steam uncurls from some valve or fitting on the nearer one, a slow exhalation, a long pale thread rising and widening and gradually becoming nothing. And then the engine is still again, and the platform is still, and the moonlight lies on everything without preference or urgency. You undress slowly. The room is warm enough. A small radiator beneath the window ticks to itself in an irregular, companionable rhythm, expanding and contracting in the heat. And the act of undressing feels, tonight, like the final stages of a long and necessary unburdening. Each thing set aside is something you do not, for the next several hours, have to carry. The quilt, when you turn it back, is everything the quilt promised it would be. You slide beneath it. The weight of it comes down over you slowly, settling along your whole length. And the sensation is almost exactly like being held. Not held tightly, not held in a way that asks anything of you, but held in the simplest sense, the sense that means you are contained and surrounded and will not drift away. The cotton of the pillow against your cheek is cool for a moment, then not cool. The mattress accommodates you. Your spine, which has been arranging and rearranging itself all day against the hard geometry of the world, softens by degrees and lengthens, and finds, at last, the position it was trying to reach all along. You close your eyes, not because sleep is coming yet, not quite, but because the darkness behind your eyes is pleasant, is yours, is a room inside a room, warm and private and deep. The clock on the wall begins to make itself known to you. It was there before, of course, but you were not ready to hear it. Now, with the lamplight orange and low against your closed eyelids, and the quilt settled over you like a kind word, you hear it fully. The tick-tock, tick-tock of a brass mechanism doing its single faithful task, measuring nothing you need to measure, counting nothing you need to count, simply marking the fact of time passing, passing gently, passing without particular ambition, passing the way a wide, slow river passes a particular stone on its bank. The stone does not need to do anything. The river does not need the stone to do anything. They are simply, companionably, together. Tick, tock, tick. The sounds come at intervals, long enough to breathe between, and you find that you are breathing between them, your breath finding the rhythm the clock is offered and accepting it without negotiation. In on the tick, out slowly on the talk. The breath does not deepen all at once. It deepens by degrees, the way the night deepened when you arrived, in layers, each one settling over the last. From outside, carried through the glass and the lace, a sound arrives. It is the long, low sigh of a cooling engine, a deep, resonant exhalation from the iron body of one of the great locomotives, its metal contracting in the cold as the last of the day's heat works its way outward through the frame and into the night air. The sound lasts for several seconds. It has a pitch, low and round, that you feel as much as hear, a vibration that moves through the old stone of the station walls and into the bed frame and into the mattress and into you, very faintly, like the memory of a sound rather than the sound itself. Then it is gone, and the tick of the clock and the slow pull of your breath remain. Your thoughts, which have been with you all day, busy and sequential and full of the hard edges of practical things, begin now to lose their edges. This is the change you have been moving towards since you first stepped onto the platform, since the steam first drifted across the lamplight, since the night porter first smiled and the warmth came out from the open door. The thoughts are still there, but they are softening at their borders, becoming less distinct, becoming more like shapes seen through lace than shapes held in the hand. You think briefly of the journey here, the train, the darkness outside the carriage window, the way the countryside dissolved into the night between stations, becoming pure velocity, pure motion, and then resolved again briefly into the lit windows of a farmhouse, a road crossing, a cluster of lights that might have been a village or might have been something else entirely, something you'll never know the name of, a particular small human warmth in the vast dark, seen once and gone. The thought drifts. You don't follow it. There is, somewhere below the thought, a warmth that has nothing to do with anything specific. It is simply warmth. The warmth of the quilt and the warmth of the room, and the warmth of the lamp burning down on the table beside you. You can feel the faint glow of it on your right hand, resting on the coverlet, even through your closed eyelids. The light is not quite dark. The dark is not quite sleep. You are in the country between them, the long, unhurried borderland, where neither quite applies, where the rules of both relax and something else governs, something slower and kinder and without a name you need to know. Far away, far enough that the distance softens it into something almost musical. A whistle sounds. A train, somewhere out in the night, moving through the dark countryside on its own long business. Its note reaching you here, after traveling across fields and through the cold air and against the old stone of the station wall, arriving at your window as barely more than a memory of itself. You hear it, and you let it pass, and it passes. The clock ticks. The moonlight on the curtains shifts by a fraction. The lace breathing, the shadow diamonds rearranging themselves without urgency on the floorboards below the window. Your hand on the coverlet is heavy. Your hand on the coverlet is very heavy. It has put itself down and has no intention of lifting itself again tonight. And this seems to you, in this long, soft moment, entirely correct, entirely fine. The natural conclusion of a hand that has been lifting and carrying and reaching all day and has at last been given permission by the warmth and the weight of the quilt and the even tick of the clock and the moonlight and the far whistle and the cooling iron breathing in the night outside to simply rest. You are still. You are very still. The lamp on the beside table sends its small warm light against the wall, and on the wall, the botanical pattern of the wallpaper seems, in the dimness, to lean very slightly inward. The leaves, or fronds, or whatever they are, bending by the most imperceptible degree toward you, the way leaves in a warm room will sometimes lean toward a window, toward light, toward the thing that is quiet and warm and already almost asleep. Tick, the clock, talk, your breath, in, out. The station holds you. The night holds the station. And somewhere at the soft, warm, seamless bottom of all of it, you let go. The light comes before you are fully awake. It arrives quietly, as morning light in old buildings always does. Not flooding in, not announcing itself, but finding its way through the gaps in the glass, with the patient persistence of something that has been doing this for a very long time and sees no need to make a performance of it. You become aware of it gradually, a warmth on the backs of your eyelids that is different from the lamplight warmth of last night, softer and more diffuse, without edges, a warmth that belongs to the outdoors and has simply agreed, for now, to come inside. You do not move immediately. There is no reason to move immediately. You lie still and let the morning light settle over you the way the quilt settled last night, completely, without asking anything in return. And you listen to the station waking up. The clock on the wall is still ticking, as it was when you fell asleep, as it has been, you understand, through all the dark and quiet hours between. The radiator beneath the window has resumed its companionable ticking too, warming with the morning. Somewhere outside, a sparrow, or something like a sparrow, some small and confident bird with opinions about the hour, delivers a short, cheerful declaration and then falls silent again. Then, through the wall, very faintly, the sound of a kettle. You open your eyes. The room in the morning is the same room and not the same room. The botanical wallpaper, which last night was a dim and dreamy suggestion, is now fully present, a deep ivory ground, patterned with small, carefully drawn ferns and trailing stems, rendered in 2 shades of green that have faded over the decades into something entirely their own. The ceiling is white and high and still. The quilt over you is a patchwork of soft golds and blues and rusts, its pattern now legible. Not diamonds as you had thought last night, but something more varied and interesting. Small squares alternating with 8 pointed stars, each piece a slightly different fabric, a slightly different era, assembled by patient hands into a whole that is greater than any of its parts. You fold it back. The floorboards are cool beneath your feet, but only briefly. The room has enough warmth already, from the radiator and from the morning itself, that the coolness passes within a few steps. You go to the window. The lace curtains are luminous now, the daylight filling every thread of them so that they seem almost aglow, a soft and even radiance that makes the room feel, briefly, underwater in the best way, in the way of warm, shallow water on a bright afternoon. You draw one panel aside. The platform in the morning is a different country from the platform of last night. The night had made it hushed and intimate, a space belonging to stillness and lamplight and slow steam. The morning has returned it to itself, long and open and clean. The pale stone flags catching the early sun and giving it back with interest. The iron arches overhead throwing their shadows in long diagonals that will move and shorten as the sun climbs. The gas lamps have been extinguished. Someone, at some early hour you did not witness, made their quiet way along the row and turned them down one by one, and their cold iron columns stand simple and elegant in the morning light. No longer needed, entirely comfortable with. That, the rails. The rails in the morning light are remarkable. You had not seen them in daylight, and you stand at the window for a long moment, simply looking. They run from right to left across your field of view in 2 perfect parallel lines. And the morning sun, still low, still coming in at a long flat angle from somewhere beyond the station's eastern end, catches the tops of them and turns them into something close to silver. Not a dull metallic gleam, but something warmer, something that shifts as you shift your angle of view, a light that seems to come from within the steel rather than being reflected off it. The rails glow with a quiet, steady intensity, like 2 long and patient thoughts. You dress slowly and go out into the corridor. The smell reaches you before the sound, something warm and substantial, something with yeast and butter in it, something that says morning in the most fundamental and reassuring of ways. The corridor is bright now, the small high window at its end, admitting a stripe of direct sunlight that lies across the floorboards in a sharp golden rectangle, precise as a letter. And your footsteps on the boards feel different in the morning, lighter, less like intrusions on silence, and more like participation in the day. The door to the porter's room is open. He is at the small range in the corner, a compact iron stove set into the chimney breast beside the larger coal stove, fitted with a hot plate and a small oven, the kind of arrangement that manages to be both entirely practical and deeply pleasing to look at. His back is to you, but he knows you are there. Without turning, he says, "Good morning," in the same low, even voice as last night, and somehow it sounds exactly right for the morning too, the voice belonging to both in the way that certain things do, certain voices, certain rooms. "Good morning," you say. He turns then, briefly, and nods. That same small nod that contains more warmth than most gestures of twice its size. On the counter, 2 plates already wait. There are thick slices of bread, toasted to an even gold and spread with butter that is melted into them, darkening the surfaces slightly in the way that only really good butter on really good bread does. There is a small pot of something deep amber, preserves of some kind, the color of late afternoon light through amber glass. There is a boiled egg in a cup. There is a wedge of yellow cheese. There is, beside each plate, a cup of tea so dark and steady it seems to anchor the whole arrangement. You sit at the counter. You eat slowly, without urgency. The food is simple and it is perfect. Each thing tastes like itself, entirely. The bread like bread, the butter like butter, the tea like the particular comfort of tea on a quiet morning when nowhere needs to be reached. Outside, through the now open window above the counter, the station sounds continue their unhurried morning composition. The distant clang of something metal being moved somewhere in the engine yard, the brief passage of a cart whose wheels find the gap in the platform stones and report it faithfully, the soft coo of the pigeon who lives, apparently, somewhere in the ironwork above platform 2. The night porter, though he is, you suppose, now simply the porter, eats beside you in comfortable silence, his cup held in both hands, his gaze directed somewhere past the window and the platform and the rails, towards some middle distance that seems to satisfy whatever looking he is doing. After breakfast you walk. It seems the natural thing to do, and he seems to expect it. He accompanies you without proposal or discussion, simply falling into step beside you as you pass through the door and onto the platform, his hands settled into the pockets of his coat, his pace matching yours with an ease that suggests long practice. The platform in the morning rewards examination. Against the station wall, 3 luggage trolleys stand in a diagonal row, their iron frames and wooden slatted beds gleaming with the same honest polish as everything else in this station that is tended and used and tended again. On the nearest one, a collection of bags and cases waits in apparent contentment. A large trunk in dark canvas, with leather corners, its brass clasps bright. A hatbox in pale gray, with a ribbon tied to its handle. 2 smaller bags in brown leather, fitted close together like old friends on a bench. Around them, on the platform stones, a scatter of mail sacks, thick canvas cinched at the neck with heavy cord. And beside those, a careful stack of parcels. You stop to look at the parcels. There are perhaps a dozen of them, varied in size, each wrapped in brown paper and sealed, some with string, some with red wax, some with both. The wax seals pressed with stamps that have left their impressions in the cooling red. A coat of arms on one, a simple initial on another, something that might be an anchor or a sheaf of wheat on a third. Each parcel is a contained mystery, a held breath, a thing that is on its way from one person to another person across some span of miles and time, carrying inside it whatever it carries. Something needed, something loved, something chosen with care in one place and destined for hands that do not yet know it is coming. Do they all find their way? You ask. He considers this. Hello, midnight companions. Tonight, I'd like to invite you into the quietest corner of the night. Together, we'll wander through a distant Victorian train station, softly lit and gently humming with the last breaths of resting locomotives. In the company of a kind night porter, this peaceful story will help your mind unwind, your body soften, and your thoughts drift toward sleep. Take a slow, easy breath. Let your eyes grow heavy, and welcome the night with me. He turns to look down the long platform, its length, its light, its patient rows of lamps and benches, and the doors of its small rooms, each one a private arrangement of warmth and quiet. Each one ready. Every station morning, he says, is like every station morning. And yet, a small pause, not quite the same. You look where he looks. The light through the amber window has moved very slightly in the time you have been standing here. The pool of it on the platform stones has shifted a fraction to the left, the edge of it sharpening as the sun climbs, the color deepening at the center where the glass is thickest into something almost golden brown, the color of the inside of a warm loaf. Time is passing. Here, that is simply a thing that is happening, and it is fine. It is more than fine. Time passing in a place like this, on a morning like this, is not loss. It is the way the light moves across the floor, steadily, gently, with no urgency and no grief, turning each moment into the next with the same patient grace that turns the pages of the leather-bound ledgers in the porter's room, the same grace that turns the hands of the brass watches on their shelf, the same grace that will, in its own good time, bring the first train of the day rolling slowly in along the silver rails, its engine sighing, its passengers blinking into the morning with the particular expression of people arriving somewhere they have been looking forward to. But not yet. Not just yet. For now, there is only the platform and the light and the quiet and the porter standing beside you with his hands in his pockets and his gaze on the middle distance, and the station breathing around both of you, slow, even, unhurried, like something very old and very contented that has found exactly the life it was meant for, and settled into it, and rests. It is the middle of the morning now, and the light through the stained glass windows has climbed to its fullest angle, the colored pools on the platform floor having shortened and brightened as the sun rose, until the amber one has become almost a square, almost orderly, sitting neatly between two flagstones as though it had always been meant to fit there. You have returned to the porter's room. The coal stove has been refreshed. You heard him do it earlier. The soft clunk of the iron door, the settling of new coals, and now it burns with a steady, deep warmth that belongs entirely to mid-morning. Different from last night's warmth, in the way that all familiar things are different when the light changes. Last night the fire was shelter. This morning it is simply a companion, present, reliable, asking nothing. You are in the armchairs again. Your cup is full again, lighter and faintly floral, the steam rising from it in a single fine thread that bends once in some unfelt current and then straightens and climbs until it disappears, as all steam eventually does, into the simpler air above. The porter is quiet for a little while. Not an uncomfortable quiet, the comfortable kind, the kind that has furniture in it, that is full of the small sounds of the stove and the clock in the station breathing around you, that needs no filling because it is already full. Then he says, I came here when I was 23. He says it without preamble, without deciding to say it, the way some thoughts arrive not as decisions but as weather, gently, inevitably, the natural consequence of the morning and the fire and the particular quality of someone sitting across from you who is content simply to listen. My father had worked the railways, he continues. Not this station, a larger one, north of here, busier, noisier, the kind of station that never fully sleeps. He worked days mostly. I came here for the nights. He turns his cup slowly in his hands. I was not, at 23, a person who slept well. I had too much in my head. Too many thoughts that wanted to arrive all at once, all talking over each other, the way a large crowd on a platform talks. Everyone with somewhere to be. Everyone with something important to say. No one listening. A small, comfortable pause. The nights here taught me to listen. You watch the fire through the mica window. The coals have caught fully now, and the light inside the stove is the deep, pulsing amber of something completely committed to what it is doing. The first year, he says, I was learning. Everything was learning. The ledgers and the keys, and the way the morning shift leaves things and expects to find them a certain way when they return. The particular sounds of the station at different hours, because the station does not sound the same at midnight as it does at 3 in the morning, and 3 in the morning is entirely different from the hour just before dawn. Each hour has its own quality. You come to know them the way you come to know rooms you have lived in a long time, by feel in the dark. He leans back. The travelers taught me too. Every night someone different. Or not different. Not exactly. The same in their need, which is what all late-night travelers share. The need to arrive somewhere safely, to be seen by someone, to know that whatever brought them to a railway platform at midnight is not the whole of the story. He pauses, and the clock marks a quiet interval, its tick more felt than heard. There was a woman I remember from the second winter. This would have been, well, many years ago. She came in on the last train, alone, carrying one small bag, and she sat on the bench at the far end of the platform for a very long time before she came to find me. When she did, she asked only for the time. She had a watch, she knew the time. But that was not what she was asking for, of course. What she was asking for was the simplest thing in the world, to be spoken to gently by someone with no particular agenda. He looks into his cup. We talked for perhaps an hour about the journey she had taken and the one she was about to take, about her sister in the south and the particular smell of her sister's kitchen, which she described with such care and detail that I could very nearly smell it myself. Something with cinnamon, she said, always. Something with cinnamon and old wood and the lingering smoke from a fire that had been burning since October. She left on the 5:40, and I never saw her again. But I have thought of her kitchen many times since, and of the way she smiled when she described it, as though the describing were a form of arriving. The fire breathes. You find that you, too, are remembering a kitchen. Some warmth, some particular arrangement of light and smell that belongs to a time you cannot precisely locate, but which is entirely real, entirely yours. The trains themselves, he says, moving the way a good story moves, not by direction, but by the natural drift of one memory finding its way to the next. The trains were different then, in those early years. Not better or worse, different. The engines were larger somehow, or perhaps I was smaller then, and the difference in proportion made them seem vast. Standing beside one in the dark, close enough to feel the heat radiating off the boiler, it was like standing beside something that breathed, not like a machine at all. Like an animal, enormous and patient, that had agreed for reasons of its own to run on rails and carry people between places, and was at rest now, and tolerating your presence with a large, warm indifference. He smiles at the middle distance. I used to walk the length of them sometimes, on quiet nights when there was nothing else requiring my attention, just walking alongside. One hand not quite touching the iron, feeling the warmth decrease as I moved further from the firebox, forward along the boiler, past the driving wheels, each one taller than me, along the tender, and then into the air beyond the cab, where the cold came back suddenly, definitively. The transition from warmth to cold and back again on those walks was one of the most pleasant sensations I have known. I have never been able to adequately explain why. He does not try to explain it now. He allows it to stand as what it is, something felt, something true, something that needs no explaining to anyone who has ever stood beside a cooling engine in the dark and understood, without words, what the warmth was saying. There was a winter, perhaps 15 years in, perhaps more, when we had a fortnight of clear sky, not cold enough for snow, just clear, so that every night the stars were fully out from dusk to dawn. And the station, which as you have seen faces open country to the east, was entirely visible to them. He pauses then. I have seen the stars from cities, which is one thing entirely, and from fields, which is another, but the stars seen from a railway station in the middle of the night are a third thing, because the station gives you something to stand in. A frame, the arches above, and the platform under your feet, and the rails going away into the dark in both directions, and above all of it, all that iron and stone and human intention, the sky simply going on and on. He stops, not because the thought is finished, but because it has reached a point beyond which words are approximate and the silence is more accurate. You understand this completely. You are very still in the armchair. The tea in your cup has cooled slightly. You take a sip and find that cool tea in a warm room tastes precisely as it should, has become, in its cooling, something different and entirely acceptable. The temperature of patience. The stove ticks. The clock ticks. Somewhere outside, a set of points shifts in the yard with a deep, dull clunk, and then settles, and the silence returns refreshed. What I learned, the porter says, and his voice is even quieter now, settled into some lower register that the morning and the fire and the long, easy current of memory have found for it. What I truly learned was not about the railways at all. It was about the interval. He lets the word rest. The interval between the last train and the first, between one traveler and the next, between a question asked and its answer forming. I had thought, when I was young, that these intervals were the empty parts, the parts to be endured while waiting for the next thing of substance. But they are not empty. They are the most substantial thing there is. A room between conversations is not a lesser room. A night between journeys is not a lesser night. He looks at you. You are resting now, he says. That is not a pause in something. It is the thing itself. The clock marks a soft quarter hour. Outside, the morning light has moved again. It always is moving, always has been, and the amber pool on the platform stones has tilted a fraction further, begun its slow journey back toward the wall. By afternoon it will be gone, and by evening the lamps will be lit again, and by midnight the platform will be still again, and the stars will be out again. And somewhere on a dark road between here and somewhere else, a traveler will be making their way to the station with a bag in their hand and a look on their face that means, I have been a long time in motion, and I am nearly there, and the station will be here, as it always has been, as it will be. I have been here, the porter says, so quietly, it is nearly to himself. A very long time. And and I have never once wished I was somewhere else. The stove breathes. The clock ticks. The steam from your cup, which had ceased for a moment, resumes. A fine, unhurried thread rising slowly in the warm air of the room, bending once and climbing. The porter, after the long quiet of his story, had settled into a particular stillness, the stillness of someone who has said what needed saying and is now content simply to be in the same room with it. He did not suggest you go exploring. He did not need to. There is a kind of silence that is also an open door, and his was that kind. And when you set your cup down and said you might walk a little, he only nodded the way he nodded at everything, as though your intentions, whatever they were entirely reasonable and entirely your own. "The East Hall," he said, as you reached the door. Just that, a gift of direction, offered without instruction. The East Hall announces itself before you reach it. You hear it first, a low, resonant hum that seems to come from the building itself, from the iron and the glass and the stone, all vibrating together at some frequency just below music. Not mechanical, not quite, but not natural either. Something in between. The sound of a large space filled with light, and the particular aliveness that certain large spaces develop over decades of being well used and carefully tended. You follow it along a corridor wider than the guest wings, its floor laid in encaustic tiles, deep red and cream in a geometric pattern. 4-petaled flowers, alternating with plain squares, worn at the center of the path where 10,000 feet have passed, and finding their color again toward the edges where feet have not reached. Then the corridor opens, and the East Hall opens with it, and you stop. There is no word that is exactly right. Vast suggests emptiness, and this is not empty. Grand suggests formality, and this is not formal, not precisely, though it has grandeur in the old sense, the sense that means made with seriousness, made to last, made with the understanding that the people passing through it deserve a space that takes them seriously in return. The roof is iron and glass. The iron comes in great arching ribs, each one springing from a point perhaps 30 feet up the side walls and meeting its partner at the apex in a long ridge that runs the full length of the hall. And between the ribs, panels of glass, old glass, slightly uneven, the kind that distorts the light passing through it by fractions, so that the sky visible beyond is not a flat blue, but a living one, shifting and breathing as clouds move across it and as your own position shifts. The light that comes through is not ordinary morning light. It has been worked on by its passage through the old glass, softened and slightly scattered, arriving on the hall floor as something warmer and less precise than light outdoors, a light that belongs here, that has become part of the place. The hall floor is stone, large pale flags laid in a simple grid, and the light lies on them in long bright parallelograms that will move as the morning moves, are already moving, are always in the state of slow and imperceptible migration from one position to the next, the way the minute hand of the station clock is always moving and yet is never caught in the act. You walk into the light. Your footsteps sound different here, more present, returning to you from the iron ribs above with a faint, pleasant echo, as though the hall is quietly acknowledging each step. You let your pace slow further. There is no reason here for any pace except the one that feels right. And the pace that feels right is slow and slower than that until you are simply walking the way water moves on a still day. Along the eastern wall, a long counter stretches the full length of the hall. Its dark wood, polished to the same deep gleam as everything else in this station that has been attended to across many years with care and beeswax and the simple determination that things ought to look as good as they possibly can. Behind the counter, a wall of wooden pigeonholes, hundreds of them, arranged in a grid that ascends nearly to the ceiling. Each hole the right size for a folded paper or a small envelope or a slim booklet of tickets. Many are empty. Some contain folded papers of ivory and cream. A few hold objects, a small parcel tied in string. A single glove of gray kid leather standing primly in its cubby as though waiting to be claimed. A brass object too distant to identify precisely, catching the hall light with a small private wink. On the counter itself, the instruments. You move toward them slowly, the way you approach anything worth looking at, without rushing the approach, understanding that the distance between you and the thing you want to see is part of the seeing. A ticket punch resting on its side. It is larger than you expected, its handles worn smooth by the grip of the many hands that have closed them together over the years. Its jaws still perfectly aligned, the spring mechanism visible along its hinge, a coiled thing of bright steel, patient as a held breath. Beside it, its impressions, a small wooden tray lined with the circular paper discs the punches produced over time. Hundreds of tiny perfect circles in cream and buff, accumulated like a slow accumulation of completed moments. A brass stamp in a wooden handle, its face too small to read without lifting it. You do not lift it. It is beautiful as it stands, the brass warm and dully gleaming, the wood worn to a shape that fits a hand no longer here, a magnifying glass with a tortoise-shell handle, a steel ruler tarnished along one edge where a hand always steadied it, an inkwell, dry now but stained permanently in its glass interior with a deep, resonant blue, the color of something still present, even in its absence. You stand at the counter for a long time. At the far end of the hall, a doorway leads to the waiting rooms. There are 3 of them, opening one from another in a long sequence. First class, second class, and a third, smaller room, whose classification has worn off its doorplate entirely, leaving only the ghost of letters in the tarnished brass. You stand in the doorway of the first and look in. The room is upholstered in green. That is the first impression and remains the dominant one. Green velvet on the bench seats that run along 3 walls. Green baize on the table at the center. Even the wallpaper above the dado rail running to a pattern of deep green ivy on cream. The ivy, drawn with botanical precision, and then repeated until it covers every inch from rail to cornice. The green is faded at the edges of each seat, where the light has reached it longest, but at the back of each cushion, in the places where the light has not gone, the original color persists, a deep, saturated green that suggests a garden in high summer seen through a window, which is perhaps exactly what it was always meant to suggest. In the corner, a clock. A long case clock, a station clock, built for permanence, standing perhaps 6 feet tall in a case of dark walnut, its face cream and steady under a domed glass that has accumulated along its inner edge a fine circle of dust, undisturbed for some time. The hands are at 9:20. You wonder briefly whether this is the correct time or whether the clock stopped once at 9:20 and has maintained that position ever since with the same patient dignity, neither apologizing for having stopped nor feeling any great urgency to resume. You listen, The clock is not ticking, and yet the room is not silent. The room has its own sounds, the sounds of old rooms. A faint creak somewhere in the floor joists as the building's temperature shifts with the morning. The distant, low, continuous hum of the East Hall's iron and glass reaching you through the walls. Somewhere further still, the barely perceptible murmur of the station's mechanical life, the pumps and valves and pressure fittings of the engine yard, conducting their quiet, essential business in the middle distance. You sit, briefly, on the green velvet. It receives you with a small sigh, the horsehair beneath compressing exactly as far as it ought, and no further. The room does not require anything of you. It has had a great many people sit in it, waiting for a great many trains, carrying a great many different weights of feeling, anticipation and relief, departure and arrival, the particular tension of journeys not yet made, and the particular ease of journeys completed. And it has held all of them with the same equanimity, the same deep green patience, and will go on doing so for as long as there are travelers to sit in it, and perhaps somewhat after. The luggage room is at the station's northern end, reached by a short passage that smells, overwhelmingly and entirely pleasantly, of leather and rope and something mineral that might be the stone floor itself. Old stone that has absorbed decades of weather tracked in from the platform and distilled it into a smell that is purely, specifically, its own. Trunks line the walls on wooden shelving built for exactly this purpose. Broad shelves, widely spaced, each one bearing its load with the solid indifference of good carpentry. But the trunks are of every size and era, a great dome-topped thing in black painted wood with brass studs. Its lock, a heavy iron face, a lighter traveling case in pale calfskin, its corners capped in silver, a monogram stamped on its lid in letters too worn to read, a canvas bag of the military kind, its grommets green with age, its straps buckled with a precision suggesting the hands that last fastened them were accustomed to precision. Each one is a held life, not a lost life. Nothing here is lost. The porter said as much, but a life held in abeyance, a life paused between one chapter and the next, its contents folded and clasped, and waiting for the hands that will open the clasps and unfold the contents, and step back into the story at the point where they left it. You pass slowly along the shelves. At the roule's far wall, 3 timetables are pinned in a row. They are large sheets of cream paper, printed in the dense, fine type of an earlier age that assumed its readers were patient and their eyesight adequate. Each column headed with a destination, and below it, a long descending list of times: 5:40, 6:15, 7:02, 7:45, 8:20. Each departure its own small act of intention, each arrival its own small act of resolution. Between the columns, the connecting services, shown in smaller type with thin ruled lines drawing the relationships between one journey and the next. The whole thing a kind of map, not of places, but of time, of the shape that movement through the world takes when it is organized and annotated and made legible. You look at them for a long while, not reading them, not planning anything, simply looking, allowing the columns of times to exist in your vision without urgency, without the need to find your name among them or your destination or your hour of departure. Simply the times themselves, their orderly descent, their steady promise that the world continues to move, the trains continue to leave, that between any 2 points on this timetable, there is a journey possible, a route charted, A porter on duty who knows which platform and which track and how long the wait will be? Someone has penciled a small mark beside the 702. Just a small mark. A tick or the beginning of a tick. Or perhaps something else entirely. A thought that arrived and was noted and was then moved past, leaving only this small carbon trace to say, I was here, and I was thinking about something, and the morning was going on around me. You turn from the timetables. The luggage room breathes its mineral smell around you, patient and unhurried. Outside the narrow window at the room's end, the station yard is visible, a wide expanse of pale gravel and old brick. The engine sheds with their large sliding doors. 2 of the doors open, 1 closed. The morning sun falling across the yard in long shadows that are growing shorter by the minute. The day's slow geometry working itself out overhead, with no assistance required. A blackbird lands on the window ledge. It regards you for a moment, head tilted, eye bright, entirely unimpressed, and then lifts and is gone, its departure so quick and clean that it leaves no trace at all. Only the ledge, the window, the yard beyond, and the quiet that was always there. You stand in it. You are in no hurry. The station holds you, as it has always held you, as it holds everything that passes through it, with a patience so complete and so long practiced that it no longer needs to be thought about. It simply is. The iron and the glass and the old stone, and the green velvet rooms, and the brass instruments resting on their polished counter, and the timetables with their columns of times, and the trunks on their shelves, and the clock that stopped at 9:20 and has never needed to explain itself. All of it holding still, all of it here, all of it quietly and entirely yours for as long as you need it. You find him at the counter. He has not heard you come in, or perhaps he has and simply does not require acknowledgement of it, does not need to turn and confirm your presence, because your presence is already fully accommodated, already factored into the room, the way the lamplight is factored in, and the sound of the stove. He stands at the counter's near end with his back to the door, and in his hands is a cloth, soft chamois, the color of old cream, and in front of him on the counter, arranged in a careful row, 6 brass lantern handles. He is polishing. You watch from the doorway for a little while before he knows you are there, because watching a person do a thing they know how to do completely is one of the quieter pleasures available to a patient observer, and you find. Become patient in the way this station makes everyone patient, by simply continuing to be itself and making haste feel unnecessary. His movements are small and even. The cloth moves in circles, not large circles, not effortful ones, but small, precise rotations, the wrist doing most of the work, the elbow barely lifting. He works from the top of each handle downward, the chamois pressing into the curves in the joints, finding the places where tarnish accumulates, and attending to them without fuss, with the matter-of-fact thoroughness of someone who knows that the difference between a well-polished surface and a merely clean one lives in exactly those difficult small places. He reaches the bottom of the 3rd handle, holds it up. The light from the east-facing window reaches it, and the brass gives the light back warmed and deepened. Not the cold glare of new metal, but the richer, rounder gleam of metal that has been attended to many times, that carries in its surface the history of its own maintenance. Each polishing, adding its own infinitesimal layer to a luster that is therefore not just the present morning, but all the mornings before it, accumulated in the brass-like rings in old wood. He sets it down and begins the fourth. "You're welcome to sit," he says, without turning, in the tone of someone who has known for some minutes that you were there and has simply been waiting for a reasonable moment to say so. You sit on the low stool at the counter's corner. "Does it need doing every day?" you ask. "The handles?" He considers this with the serious consideration he gives everything. "Not every day. Strictly. Every other day would probably suffice. But every day means it never becomes a large task. Every day means the tarnish never gets a foothold." He turns the fifth handle, finds a small dark patch near the join, addresses it. Most things are like that, I find. The doing of them daily is not about the thing itself so much as about the habit of attention. Attend to something every day and you come to know it very well. And knowing a thing well is its own reward, even if the thing is only a lantern handle. He finishes the fifth, lifts the sixth. When the handles are done and return to their brackets above the door, you watch him do this too, each one lifted and set on its hook with the same care as the polishing. The hook found without looking, the handle seated with a small, satisfying click. He opens the ledger. The ledger is the large one from the end of the shelf, its cover a deep wine red that has faded to the color of dried autumn leaves at its corners and spine. He opens it to the current page with a practiced motion that requires no search, his thumb finding the right leaf directly, and he sets it on the counter before him and uncaps his pen. You lean slightly to see. The page is divided into columns, their headings written in his hand, the same hand that is writing now. A small, clear script that nonetheless has character, has the slight forward lean of someone who thinks in complete sentences, the slight thickening of certain downstrokes that comes from pressing gently with genuine attention. The columns read: arrival, departure, number, class, passengers noted, remarks. He writes last night's last entry first. He was awake for it, the 11:48 from the west, which arrived 3 minutes late and departed 7 minutes after that, carrying 5 passengers outbound and none inbound. He writes this in the remarks column. 3 minutes late, slight delay on account of points at the eastern junction. Weather clear, station quiet. No incidents. He writes, no incidents with the particular satisfaction of someone who knows that no incidents is its own achievement. The achievement of a night spent doing everything correctly and thereby ensuring that nothing happened that needed to be noted. He blots the entry, turns the page. Today's entries begin with the 6:15, which he did not witness, but which the morning porter has logged in pencil on a slip of paper left folded on the counter. He transfers this entry to the ledger in ink, the pencil notation becoming permanent, becoming, in its small way, part of the history of this station and this line, and every journey that has passed through here and been noted and kept. Each entry takes perhaps 2 minutes. There are 7 to transfer. You find, watching him work, that the time passes without wait. The pen moves, the ink dries, the blotter descends and lifts. The entries accumulate down the page with the same quiet authority as the station's own passage through the hours. Steadily, without drama, each one following the last, in the only possible order. The clocks are next. He takes from the drawer beneath the counter a small brass key, not one of the platform keys, smaller than those, a clock winding key, its bow a flat oval, and its bit precisely fitted to the movements it serves, and moves through the station with it in the manner of a physician on rounds. Purposeful, but unhurried, knowing exactly where he is going and what he will find when he arrives there. The first clock is in the porter's room itself, which he winds with 4 careful turns of the key, counting them under his breath. You hear it, barely, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then tests with a light touch to the pendulum, which swings once, twice, and resumes its steady voice. The second is in the corridor outside the guest rooms, a smaller wall clock in a mahogany case. Its tick slightly higher and faster than the room clocks. A different personality, a different tempo, but equally faithful. The third is the first-class waiting room's long case, which requires a panel opened at the clock's side. The key fitted to a different arbor, 8 turns this time. The mechanism deeper and more substantial. The sound of the spring receiving the tension. A low, resonant protest that resolves into contentment. The fourth clock, he tells you as you walk with him now, is the platform clock. The platform clock is the large one. The one mounted high on the wall above the timetable boards. Its face, perhaps 2 feet across, its numerals Roman, its minute hand moving in the particular way of station clocks, whose movements are wound to the same specification as the trains they serve. A precise, measured beat, exactly 1 second apart. Each advance of the second hand, a small, clean click that can be heard at some distance in a quiet station. He winds it from a ladder that he places against the wall with the same care with which he does everything. 7 turns. He descends, looks up at the clock face, adjusts his own pocket watch against it, the small silver one that lives in his waistcoat, which he has carried for many years, and which keeps, he has mentioned, rather better time than it has any right to given its age. There is a fraction of a second between them, perhaps. He notes this with a small nod and adjusts nothing, because a fraction of a second between a pocket watch and a station clock is not a problem. It is simply the difference between 2 instruments that are both doing their best. At mid-morning, between the winding of the last clock and the brewing of midday tea, he feeds the cats. There are 3 of them you have established, a large tabby of indefinite age and unshakable dignity, who lives primarily in the luggage room and has an arrangement with the trunks that suits all parties. A younger tortoiseshell who prefers the engine yard and is often found sitting on the warm brick of the shed walls in the late morning sun, and a small, entirely black cat of unknown provenance who arrived one November several years ago and has never left, and who resides mostly in the first-class waiting room on the green velvet bench nearest the window. He carries the food in a small tin, warmed slightly on the stove. Not hot, just the edge off the cold, because it is his view that cats, like travelers, deserve a meal that has been thoughtfully prepared. The tabby appears from behind a trunk the moment the tin is opened, its manner combining urgent interest with a studied attempt at nonchalance. The tortoiseshell must be fetched from the yard, or rather, informed, which consists of the porter standing at the yard door for a moment and saying, quietly, "Mid-morning," as though issuing a gentle reminder of an appointment, after which the cat descends from its wall and arrives in its own time. The black cat is already in the waiting room when you reach it. It is sitting upright on the green velvet in the posture of something that has been informed of nothing and has arrived entirely of its own accord, by coincidence, and would appreciate it if you did not suggest otherwise. The porter sets down the 3 portions on their saucers without comment. He watches them eat for a moment with the expression he reserves for things done well. A quiet, settled satisfaction. Not proud exactly, but pleased in the way that one is pleased by the correct functioning of a system that has been designed with care. Midday tea is made with the same attention as every other thing. The water is brought to the full boil and not a moment past it. He listens to it, the pot on the range, hearing the moment the boil becomes a full rolling boil by its sound alone, lifting the pot at precisely that moment with a cloth around the handle, and carrying it to the teapot, which has been warmed with a small quantity of water, swirled and emptied beforehand. The tea, loose measured in the small silver spoon he keeps for exactly this purpose, is allowed to steep for 4 minutes. Not 3, not 5. He watches the platform while it steeps. You stand beside him at the window, the two of you looking out along the length of the platform as the midday train comes in. It comes in slowly, as all trains come in here. This station is not a fast station, not a rushing through station, but a considered one. A station where arrivals are taken seriously. The engine rounds the gentle curve at the platform's far end with a long descending sigh of steam, its wheels already slow, the great driving rods completing their circles with a stately deliberation that is, in its way, beautiful. The carriages follow, swaying very slightly as the speed falls, their windows passing like a sequence of lit rooms. A face here, a hand on a window there. Someone reaching for a bag on the overhead shelf, someone leaning back with eyes closed, already somewhere else in their thoughts. The train stops, the platform receives it. A handful of passengers descend, and a handful board, and there is a brief, ordinary bustle of the kind, thousands of times a day, at thousands of stations across the country, without anyone marking it as remarkable, which is perhaps the best evidence of how remarkable it is. An engine and its carriages and its fuel and its crew and its timetable all converging at exactly this point, at exactly this hour, day after day, the whole enormous, intricate system of it functioning so reliably that the people stepping on and off do so without looking up, without marveling, without once considering what it required to make this ordinary moment possible. The porter watches all of it. He watches it the way he winds the clocks and polishes the handles and writes the ledger entries and feeds the cats with full attention, without urgency, finding in the watching what he has always found in every task that is done completely and without remainder. The train departs. The platform is quiet again. Tea should be ready, he says, and you go in. The station breathed differently after midnight. It was Emiliano who suggested the walk, not the young porter who scurried about with luggage carts and apologies, but the older one, the one with the silver-threaded mustache and the unhurried way of moving, as though he had long since made peace with time. He had found the traveler sitting alone on a bench near Platform 3, coat folded across the lap, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. A quiet person recognizes another quiet person. Without ceremony, Emiliano had said only, "Come, the tracks are worth seeing at this hour." And somehow, without question, the traveler had risen and followed. They passed through a low iron gate at the far end of the platform, the hinges sighing like something half asleep, and stepped out into the open space behind the station where the world fell away into a long corridor of shadow and silver. The tracks ran ahead of them in twin lines, curving gently out of sight toward the eastern hills. At this hour they had stopped being instruments of industry and become something else entirely, something lunar, almost devotional. The rails caught the starlight along their polished upper edges and held it so that two unbroken rivers of soft luminescence stretched into the dark, parallel and patient, as though the sky had simply decided to lie down and rest a while upon the earth. The traveler slowed without meaning to, arrested by it. "I never get used to it," Emiliano said, noticing. 22 years, and I still stop here most nights to look." The gravel underfoot gave a small, muffled crunch with each step, a sound like the settling of a house, like the turning of pages in an empty library. It was cool out, but gently so, the kind of cool that does not demand anything of you, that simply rests against the skin, the way a grandmother's hand rests against a forehead. The traveler pulled the coat on properly and felt, with some surprise, deeply comfortable. Far down the yard, 3 or 4 trains stood in their sidings, dark and enormous. They were not sleeping exactly. Machines do not sleep, but they had assumed something like the posture of sleep, still, massed, their breath held. Occasionally, a soft metallic sound drifted up from their direction, a tick or a groan of cooling metal, and the night absorbed it easily, the way still water absorbs a stone. The traveler thought about all the miles those trains had traveled that day, all the windows through which the countryside had poured like a film, unreeling, all the faces momentarily illuminated in their glass reflections. And now this perfect cessation. The station building itself glowed amber behind them. A single lamp on Platform 1 swept its yellow circle back and forth in a slow arc, moved by nothing visible, or perhaps by the gentlest of breezes. It caught the edge of a baggage cart, the corner of a sign, the back of a bench, and released each in turn, and the traveler watched it for a long time, hypnotized, the way one watches the beam of a lighthouse from a hillside, not for any practical reason, but because something in the rhythmic sweep answers something rhythmic inside the chest. "Do you think about them?" the traveler asked eventually. "The people who pass through." Emiliano considered the question without hurry. They had stopped walking by some mutual unspoken agreement and were standing side by side between the rails, which was perhaps not strictly permitted, but felt, at this hour, entirely reasonable. "Every day," he said, "and at night, too, sometimes, but not in a sad way. More like, you know how a river thinks about its water? It doesn't mourn the water that has passed. It is simply made of passing." The traveler turned this over. "I used to want to hold on to things," the traveler said. "Moments, places. I thought if I held tightly enough they wouldn't go. And now?" A pause. Somewhere in the dark, a night bird called once and fell silent. Now I think the holding was the problem. I was so busy clutching the moment that I couldn't feel it. Emiliano made a small sound of agreement, warm and unperforming. He reached into his breast pocket and produced 2 wrapped sweets, the kind sold at the station kiosk, hard candies in crinkled paper, and offered one without comment. The traveler accepted it. They unwrapped them in companionable quiet, the paper crinkling loudly and absurdly in the stillness, and both of them smiled at the sound. They walked on. The gravel gave way briefly to packed earth, then back to gravel again, each texture speaking its own particular word beneath the feet. The stars above were extraordinary, this far from the main platforms. Away from even the station's modest light, they arrived in multitudes, crowded and careless, spilled like sugar across a dark cloth. The traveler tipped the head back and felt the familiar ancient sensation. Smallness without sadness, the loosening of something knotted behind the sternum. "I used to think," Emiliano said, "that the purpose of travel was the destination. That all this, the waiting, the passing through, was simply the price you paid. And now?" He gestured unhurriedly at the space around them, at the rails holding their stolen starlight. at the distant amber glow of the station, at the gravel, the cool air, the resting trains, the lamplight making its patient revolutions. "Now I think this is the destination," he said. All of it, every between place, every in-between hour. The traveler felt something shift, quietly and without drama, the way a door that has been stuck for a long season finally swings open on a warm day, not with any great force, just with ease, and a sense of having always been about to. Gratitude arrived in the way it sometimes does at night, not as a thought, but as a sensation, warm and spreading, beginning somewhere below the ribs and moving upward. Gratitude for this walk, unplanned and unscheduled, for the porter who had simply said come and meant it, for the rails and their light-keeping, for the night bird, for the candy wrapper's crinkle, for the specific cool of this specific air, for being here at all, in this between place, in this between hour. They turned back eventually, neither of them announcing the decision. The station drew them gently, its amber windows like the windows of a house one has lived in for a long time and loves without always noticing. The lamp was still sweeping its slow arc across Platform 1. A night train was being readied somewhere in the distance. The traveler could hear the first stirrings, the low, purposeful sounds of something large, remembering its function. At the gate, Emiliano held it open, and the hinges sighed again. "Thank you," the traveler said. It was not enough, and was exactly enough. The old porter smiled, not the professional smile he deployed for passengers with questions and complaints, but a smaller, quieter one, worn only in certain hours. "Sleep well," he said. "The morning trains are kind ones." The traveler walked back through the station, past the dozing ticket windows, the dark kiosk, the benches where strangers had sat and would sit again, and found the small room beyond Platform 4 that had been arranged for the night. The sheets were cool and plain. The window looked out on the yard, and there, just visible from the pillow, the two rails still ran their quiet course into the dark, still holding what starlight they had been given, steady and unhurried, going nowhere and everywhere at once. The traveler closed both eyes, and for perhaps the first time in a very long journey, felt no need to be anywhere else. Outside, the lamp went on sweeping. The gravel settled. The trains breathed their slow, metallic breath, and the night held everything gently, the way it always does, like cupped hands full of water, careful not to spill. It happened just before the first light, that particular shade of dark that is not quite night anymore, when the sky turns from black to a deep, exhausted blue, and the stars don't vanish so much as recede, politely, as though stepping back to allow someone else through. The traveler had not slept so much as drifted, the way you drift in shallow water, aware of the surface but untroubled by it, and had woken, if waking was the right word, to find the window full of that blue and the yard outside very still, and a feeling of unusual clarity sitting quietly in the chest like a warm stone. Emiliano was waiting in the corridor, not waiting in any urgent sense. He was simply there, the way certain things are simply there in the early morning. A cup already filled, a door already open, as though they had been arranged by some gentle and attentive intelligence that asks nothing in return. He had his uniform coat on, but the brass buttons were not all fastened, and his cap was tucked under his arm rather than worn, which gave him the look of a man between roles, belonging more to the morning than to the station. In his other hand he held something small. He did not draw attention to it. "You are leaving on the 7:15, he said. It was not a question. I am. He nodded, and they stood for a moment in the particular companionship that had grown between them, not long enough to have history, but deep enough, somehow, to have trust. The corridor was quiet. Somewhere below, the station was beginning its first tentative stirrings. A trolley wheel, a distant door, the low exchange of voices from the platform staff arriving for the early shift. But up here, not yet. Up here, there was still a margin of stillness, and they were standing in it together. The traveler took it. It was lighter than expected, lighter almost than it had any right to be, as though it were more idea than object, and warm. Not the warmth of a hand that has recently held it, but its own warmth, interior and constant, like a coal that has been banked for a long night and still holds the memory of its fire. The luminescence moved again, and the traveler felt something answer it, a settling, a quieting, the sensation of a compass needle finding north. "I don't know what I'm meant to do with it," the traveler said. "Nothing," said Emiliano. "You're not meant to do anything with it. It isn't a tool." He seemed to consider for a moment how to say the next thing. When you're on the train and you can't remember what you're traveling toward, when you arrive somewhere new and the newness feels like too much, when the night is very long and you've lost the thread, he tilted his head gently. "Hold it, that's all. Just hold it and let it remind you." "Remind me of what?" He smiled. "The small private one, the one that wasn't for passengers. That you already know the way." The traveler closed the fingers around the vial and stood with it for a moment. Out the window, at the end of the corridor, the sky had shifted to a deep rose along the horizon's edge, and the rails below had caught it and were holding it, those faithful keepers of light, already preparing for the day's first reflections. A pigeon landed on the platform railing, looked around with the brisk authority of a bird that has places to be, and flew off again. Somewhere in the station's belly, the first proper sounds of morning were gathering themselves. "You've given things like this before," the traveler said. It was not entirely a guess. Emiliano looked briefly surprised, then thoughtful. "Once or twice, when someone seemed to need it more than I did." A pause, and each time I thought I'd miss it. But I never did. It always seemed to refill somehow. The station keeps making more. There was a rightness to this that the traveler didn't need to examine. Some things explain themselves not to the mind, but to somewhere quieter. "Can I ask you something?" the traveler said. "Of course. What is it you love about this? The night work, the empty platforms, all the arriving and leaving. Most people would find it lonely." Emiliano looked down the corridor toward the window and its rising light, and was quiet for long enough that the traveler wondered if the question had been too much. But then he said, "I used to travel when I was young. I was always looking for the place where I would finally feel settled. I went a long way looking for it. A beat. Then one night I was working late, my first year here, and the last train pulled out, and the platform went quiet, and I just stopped, and I thought, oh, it's here. It was here the whole time." The traveler felt the small warm weight of the vial in the palm. It was here the whole time. They walked down together to platform 4, and the station was filling now with morning's gentle industry. A woman arranging newspapers at the kiosk, 2 young porters comparing manifests, the ticket windows flickering to life one by one like candles lit down a long table. The 7:15 stood at its platform, patient and enormous, exhaling soft white breath into the cool air. A few early passengers were already boarding, moving through the yellow doorlight with their bags and their sleepy, purposeful faces, each of them carrying whatever it was they were carrying, toward whatever it was they were going toward. At the door to the carriage, the traveler turned. There were things to say. The traveler could feel them, a whole gathering of them. Words of gratitude and recognition, and the particular love one feels for people who give gifts without needing acknowledgement for the giving. But Emiliano made a small gesture, unhurried, that somehow absorbed all of it and returned it simply as warmth. "Safe travels," he said. All of them. The traveler stepped up into the carriage and found a window seat, and the train began its slow departure. The platform sliding past, the station drawing back, the yards opening up into open country with their quiet geometry of rails and signals, and the blue morning light lying flat and clean across it all. Emiliano was already gone. Back to the station, back to the corridor and the platforms, and the long, reliable work of being present for whoever arrived next. The traveler held the vial up to the window. In the morning light, it glowed differently, warmer, less silver now, more gold, the luminescence steady and unhurried. It seemed almost to pulse. Or perhaps that was simply the traveler's own pulse, felt through the fingers, the body's constant and ordinary miracle. The countryside moved past. The rails sang their quiet traveling song. And in the palm of one hand, small as a secret and weightless as understanding, the light went on, doing what it had always done, shining without effort. From the inside out, the dawn came in like something that had been waiting outside all night, patient and unhurried, asking nothing. First, there was only the suggestion of it, a loosening of the dark along the eastern edge of things, a softening, the way ice doesn't so much melt as simply stop being ice. Then, a color that had no name, or had too many. Not quite rose, not quite the gray of a dove's wing, but something that moved between all three, as though unable to choose and content not to. The mist that had settled overnight in the low places along the tracks against the station's stone foundations, pooling in the doorways of the goods sheds, caught this unnameable color and held it, and the whole world for a few minutes was made of nothing but that soft, suffused light and the stillness underneath it. The traveler stood on platform 4 with a bag at the feet and watched it happen. The Victorian station rose above in its old authority, the iron canopy with its fretwork edges, still lovely after so many decades of weather and steam. The red brick face of the main building, its high windows beginning to catch the first genuine light and return it in warm amber panels, the clock above the entrance, its hands moving with the same patient indifference with which they had moved for over 100 years, marking a kind of time that had less to do with minutes and more to do with the accumulated weight of all the arrivals and departures that had passed beneath it. Pigeons walked the roofline. A sparrow landed on the back of the nearest bench, assessed the traveler with one bright eye, and flew off satisfied. There was wood smoke somewhere, and something else, the particular morning smell of a working station, metal and stone, and old timber, and the ghost of tea, and the clean cold air pushing through it all like a thread through cloth. The traveler breathed it in and thought, I will remember this. Not the trying to remember kind, but the kind that just happens, that settles somewhere wordless and stays. Emiliano came along the platform at 6:10, which was when he always came, had always come, would presumably go on coming long after this particular morning was only one more morning. In a long chain of them, he walked with his unhurried walk, coat fastened now, cap on, the professional version of himself restored, And yet the warmth of the previous night was still visible, the way lamplight is still visible in a room after the lamp has been turned down. Not bright, but present. He carried 2 cups of tea in the station's thick white mugs, and he offered one without preamble. And the traveler took it, and they stood together watching the dawn advance across the yard. The tea was too hot to drink properly, so they held it instead, and the warmth came up through the ceramic and into the palms, and this was enough. "Will you go far?" Emiliano asked after a while. "Some distance," the traveler said. "I'm not certain where I'll stop. You'll know when you get there. You said that before." The mist along the tracks was beginning to stir now, moved by the small breathing warmth of the arriving morning. It lifted in soft columns, drifted, broke apart into wisps that caught the light and were briefly golden before dissolving into nothing. The tracks emerged from it in stages. First the rails' polished crowns, then the wooden sleepers, then the whole long grammar of the line running away into the middle distance, where it curved gently and disappeared into a stand of trees, still dark against the brightening sky. Beyond those trees, the world, whatever the world was this morning, whatever it was holding, the traveler touched the breast pocket where the vial was kept. It was there, warm and constant. "I don't know how to thank you," the traveler said, "for any of it. The walk last night, the conversation, a small gesture toward the pocket. Emiliano turned his cup in his hands. "You don't need to. The station thanks people for passing through. That's what it's for." He looked along the platform in both directions, at the length of the thing, the stone and iron of it, the old reliable bones of it. "I'm just part of the station. You're the best part of it." He received this quietly, neither dismissing it nor being overwhelmed by it. He had the gift, the traveler thought, of accepting kindness without flinching, of letting gratitude land without deflecting it away. It was a rare thing, and perhaps only possible in people who had long since stopped needing praise to know their worth. The 7:15 was announced. The sound moved through the station with the low authority of a thing that had been announced 10,000 mornings before, and would be announced 10,000 mornings after, neither triumphant nor sorrowful, simply factual, the world organizing itself in its usual way. The traveler picked up the bag. They stood facing each other in the manner of people who have found, briefly, a profound and uncomplicated understanding, and who know it is time to release it back into the larger world from which it came. There are goodbyes that take a long time, because the words haven't been found yet. This was not one of those. The words were not needed. What existed between them was complete without them. Emiliano held out his hand. The traveler took it, not a brisk professional shake, but the kind of handshake that lasts a moment longer than social convention requires, the kind where both people are aware of the weight and warmth of another hand and grateful for it. "Safe travels," he said. "All of them, the traveler echoed. And then the traveler was walking along the platform, through the low gate at the far end, and out onto the misty path that ran beside the tracks as they left the station's domain and moved out into open country. This path was narrow and slightly overgrown at its edges, soft with moss between the sleepers, the ground giving gently underfoot the way good ground does after rain. The mist was thicker here, away from the station's warmth, and it moved around the traveler's feet like something affectionate, like the hymns of a very quiet tide. The traveler walked. Behind, the station was already beginning to change, to soften, to become more idea than building, the way things do when you move away from them in morning mist. The clock tower was still visible, its face a pale circle above the dissolving roofline. The iron canopy caught the new light and gave back a last, long gleam. The red brick held its warmth for a moment, a final blush, and then the mist folded around it gently, and it was gone. Not abruptly, not with any drama, but the way a dream goes when you try to hold it. Gradually and completely. And with the feeling that it has not disappeared, so much as moved somewhere just beyond the edge of seeing. The traveler did not look back more than once, not out of indifference, out of something better than that, out of the knowledge that it was all still there and would be there, and that what had happened inside those walls and on those platforms and beside those rails was not the kind of thing that required looking back to confirm its reality. It had happened. It was carried now, in the warmth of two hands recently held, in the settled feeling behind the ribs, in the small luminous weight in the breast pocket that pulsed its gentle pulse, steady as a second heartbeat, quiet as a lamp in a window seen from a long way off on a cold night. The path curved. The trees closed in on either side, bare-limbed and patient, their upper branches beginning to catch the growing light and hold it in fine nets. Somewhere in them, birds were beginning, not in chorus yet, just the first tentative voices, each one separate and careful, feeling out the morning's acoustics, making sure the day was ready to receive them. The traveler walked on, and the world breathed, and the mist went on lifting. This is where we leave them. Not at a destination, because there is no final destination. Not really. Only the next arrival and the one after that, each one carrying its own small revelations, its own lamplit platforms and unhurried porters, and nights when the rails hold the stars and everything becomes, briefly, luminous. We leave them here on the quiet path in the soft in-between of dawn, that tender hour when the dark has fully released its hold and the day has not yet begun to press. That hour when the world is at its most permissive, when the mind loosens its grip on all it has been carrying and the body remembers what it is to be simply warm and breathing and held by nothing more demanding than the morning air. Perhaps you are in that hour now. Perhaps the day is already done, and the journey has been long, and you are somewhere soft and still, a room you know, a pillow you trust, the familiar dark behind your closed eyes. Let the station go. Let the porter stand at his platform, calm and kind, one hand raised. Let the rails run their silver roads into the dark and the distance. Let the vial rest in the pocket, warm and constant, doing what it was always doing, shining from the inside out, quiet and sufficient, asking nothing. You already know the way. You have always known the way. Rest now. The trains are sleeping, the night is gentle, and the dawn is coming. Absolutely everything is well.